what's great about passive investing and investing in syndications, and I talk about this all the time because I think it's so important, is taking control of your future. So many of us are raised and told, okay, invest in the stock market, invest in the stock market. And that's okay. If you want to do that, and that's great. And we're invested in the stock market too. But diversification is really key, and understanding that you can take control of your future, and you should know what you're investing in. So if you're investing in a real estate syndication, what does that asset look like? Is it multifamily? We have a short-term rental fund, right? We were talking about that earlier. What does passive investing mean?
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast, because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelaw.podcast.com.
Welcome to the Real Estate Law Podcast. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Jason Muth right here. That guy over there is attorney broker Rory Gill from Next Home Titletown Real Estate and Urban Village Legal in Boston. Rory, we're going to be talking about passive investing today, leaving your W-2 income, leaving your W job, raising money. And we found a great expert that could talk about all three of those topics. And Rory, we're eager to introduce her to our audience.
Yep. And this is the dream for many, many people. So if you're sitting at the beach this summer and you want to know how you can stay there all year round, this is the podcast episode for you.
Yeah. We've talked about passive investing on this podcast a number of times, but I want to really dig deeper into what is passive, how you find investments, how you work with people that are raising money, raising capital for investments, how you build trust with your investors if you're raising the money. And I think that we found someone that could speak about all these different great topics. And we'd like to welcome Angie Akee to our podcast. Angie comes to us from Florida, and Angie is with Ohana. I'm sorry, I missed the name. Ohana Investment Partners. Yes, Angie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I really appreciate it, Jason and Rory, and the opportunity to be here and speak to your podcast guests.
We love your name. I love the hibiscus flower that's in your name. I love growing hibiscus flowers. That is a hibiscus flower, right? In your logo?
It is.
Yeah. Is there a connection to Hawaii?
So my husband's family on his dad's side, his dad was actually born in Hawaii. So he still has family in Hawaii. And our goal is so I chose the name Ohana. I'm a big believer of community and bringing people together to do amazing things. Hence the name Ohana, but obviously that comes from Hawaii. And so it's part of our family and it's part of our mentality, I guess. There's a Hawaiian mindset. So it's a huge part of what we are, what we believe. And the goal is to have one of our retirement homes in Hawaii. So it's all encompassing.
Yes. Yeah. It's great to set goals like that and to kind of build a theme around a topic that is dear to you. Building community, I think, is really important in the real estate world and the investor space. I don't want to get too far ahead and speak on your behalf. I did see that, you host regular quarterly meetups with your investors and you're trying to build community with everybody. And that is all fantastic. But let me just take a step back and have you introduce a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we can get into some of the nitty-gritty of passive investing.
Sure, absolutely. So again, my name is Angie Akee. I am the owner and founder of Ohana Investment Partners. But let me rewind a bit. I spent, over 20 years, right about. I feel like my brain is erasing that portion in corporate America. So I had a really successful sales career. I spent, I think, close to 18 years in pharmaceutical sales and called on hospital systems throughout Florida. I did very well. I was really great at it, to be honest, but I had no passion for it. It's not what I wanted to do. So fast forward to 2018, I uncovered real estate investing and dabbled a little bit in various forms of real estate investing and decided that I wanted to leave corporate America. I had a very large salary to replace. So I went into wholesaling because I still believe wholesaling is probably the fastest path to cash in real estate investing. So I started wholesaling single family homes in October of 2018. And left corporate America in July of 2019. I left in July because I strategically wanted to get my last bonus. So I had to be there 30th. So I left in July of 2019. And quite frankly, I have never looked back. I wholesaled single family houses until the end of 2021. I realized again, I had done very well for myself, had built a business. And then I'm a big believer of owning your own dream. And we can talk about that a little bit. But I looked at the business that I had built and the life I was living and went, I've created a business I don't love. So I totally shut it down. I'm a type A personality. I jump in with 2 feet. I like to burn the boat. So I shut that business down and went all into commercial real estate investing, focusing on syndications. So Ohana Investment Partners was born, and I have since built a business that I love dearly and passionate about. And it's like, I just love what I do. It's my dream life every day.
Before we go on to, what you're working on now, I want to go revisit the burn ship just a little bit. And wholesaling is something that a lot of our listeners ask about. A lot of people who are entering the space ask about, how should people think about the concept of wholesaling in the real estate investment context? What is it good for and what is it not good for?
It is really good for getting cash quickly, to be honest. You can get a property under contract and assign it and be out of it and have your money in 7 to 10 days, depending on the state, right? I know everyone's different. And if you're listening and you don't know exactly what wholesaling is, just to boil it down, it's basically getting a property under contract and assigning that contract to another buyer for a fee. And that's it. So it's really great for making cash very quickly. You don't have to spend a lot to be able to do wholesaling. You can door knock, you can cold call yourself. There's a lot of stuff you can do, or you can pay for marketing, which I did because I had a job as well. So what it's not good for is building passive income. There's no passive income. You're literally, and I'm a very visual person, so I think in pictures. I felt like the same hamster on a different wheel. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh. So it's not good for building passive income. It's also not good if you, and I'm a person, it's dependent on how you built it, right? I had a very small team, but I struggled because I wasn't the buyer and I wasn't the seller. So I felt like I didn't have complete control over the transaction. So it was dependent on other people holding up their ends of the bargain, which is like herding cats sometimes. It wasn't a great fit for me, but it is a great way and a great entry into real estate investing.
And there was overlap between your W-2 job for a number of months, for a variety of reasons. You've already alluded to one of them, which is you want to get a bonus, which is a legitimate reason that a lot of people don't want to leave those W-2 jobs because they keep you on that hamster wheel of the quarterly and annual bonuses. Talk about that overlap period where you were working full-time and you said, I want to get out of this. And you discovered wholesaling as kind of a way to get out. Like, what were those months like?
So I started wholesaling in October 2018, but I had started in real estate investing a little bit before. I want to say, I don't know, early 2018, maybe. Actually, I think 2017 is one of my businesses I started in 2017. So in essence, there were almost 2 years where people will say, oh, you double dipped, right? That's great. You have income coming from this and you're working full time. Well, it wasn't great. So I had a 4-year-old at the time. It's now almost 10, but I had a 4-year-old. So my days, look, it's like everything, right? It looks really glamorous on social media. People think it's great. And then you start digging, you're like, ooh, you did all that, right? Yeah. So I was raising a family. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I did my morning. I'm a big mindset person. So I did that, then got to work on real estate investing. Then when he got up, did all the mom stuff, got him to school, went to work, did my full-time job. I was in sales, so I had a decent amount of flexibility. So kind of did some real estate investing between appointments, literally door knocked between appointments, and then came home, did the mom thing, put him to bed, and worked until midnight, usually every single night. And I did this for almost 2 years. In hindsight, I have no idea how I did it, but I was on a mission. I knew I wanted to leave corporate America. And I am a big proponent of setting goals and making sure you're meeting those goals and milestones before you jump ship. You have to have a plan and you have to execute. In my opinion.
Angie, That sounds so glamorous. I don't know what you're talking about.
So glamorous, right? Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, but putting in the work, I mean, like you built a plan, not just for your day, but for your year and then for your 2 years, basically. You were saying, what's my exit? What's my entry? How am I going to do this with a toddler? And we have a 4-year-old, right? And this is the world that we're in right now. Before you hit record, I mentioned that my job ended last year. It wasn't my choice, but that was fine because I was going to leave anyway in a couple months and do what we're doing right now. So, on the way out, I had a good transition, and we'd been doing real estate investing since 2016 as short-term rental operators. And we're looking for kind of that next layer that you've discovered yourself. You did wholesaling for a couple of years. And I like to think of wholesaling almost like building your bankroll. Like you mentioned, it's good for cash flow, but when you turn off the spigot, it's over, right? There's nothing that's going to pay a dividend afterward, but it pays the bills and it builds your bankroll so you can go invest in something else. You mentioned that you built that company that you then realized you didn't like, okay, or that you don't want to do that anymore. What was that transition like, where you said, okay, this is, I'm the W-2 employer now, essentially. Like, I am the boss and I want to now leave this job, so talk about that transition into the next step.
It takes courage. It takes, I think the biggest leap of faith, literally and figuratively, I've ever taken was leaving my W-2. Probably the second biggest was burning my business and starting over. But, because, and we talked about the bankroll of wholesaling, I had built up money that I had. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to go figure this out. Because the reality is when you're looking at commercial real estate and syndications, a lot of the payout and the vast majority for operators and fund managers is on the back end. And that may be 5 years down the road. So I knew, and this is a conversation, obviously I sat down and had with my husband. He's probably my biggest cheerleader, he and my almost 10-year-old. But I said, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I expect for it to look like financially, time-wise, mentally. And, this is what I want. And so we're probably going to take a hit for, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 years. But then we're going to blow through where I was. Mm-hmm. And so we had that conversation and he said, do it. I have faith in you. So I built my business now.
And then along the way, during those 2 or 3 years where you were going to take a hit, were there successes along the way that allowed you to kind of keep the momentum going?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I still do some active real estate investing, because you have to feed the beast, right? So, but it looks different now. Now it's focused on, for instance, we bought lots in a neighboring county, and we're building affordable homes. We have an affordable housing crisis in the United States. Specifically in Florida, we have some issues. So thought, well, let me build a house. I want it to be an affordable house for someone, and this is what we're going to do. So that's active income. So I still have some of that going. And then as I'm working on different projects, different syndications, different commercial real estate investments, there's money coming in from that, whether I'm an active investor or a passive investor. So I help people passively invest in real estate. I very often either invest alongside of them in an offering, or I cannot do that if it's through a retirement vehicle. So I will often invest passively with some of the operators that I'm working with in other offerings. So I am a passive investor in over 1,500 doors. So I have money coming in from that. And then I am active. I'm active in about 800.
Wow. Talk about what that means, being involved in all those investments also. So you're out there raising money and finding people that are going to want to invest in all of these syndication deals, and you're putting money up yourself to kind of have skin in the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I partner with various different operators or various different teams. And so that either looks like I'm a general partner on the team or I'm a fund manager. I spend a lot of time vetting the teams that I work with, the sponsor teams and the general partner teams, doing my due diligence. So I spend a lot of time in that, looking at their communications, looking at their financials, looking at their due diligence on the asset itself and underwriting. So they underwrite it, the bank underwrites it, I underwrite it again. Then it gets to my investors, and I always recommend they do their due diligence as well. And so that's what I do also for any passive investments. I still do my due diligence too. It's a bit of a juggle. And then, and then I work with investors and bring offerings to them. And what's great about passive investing and investing in syndications, and I talk about this all the time because I think it's so important, is taking control of your future. So many of us are raised and told, okay, invest in the stock market, invest in the stock market. And that's okay. If you want to do that, and that's great. And we're invested in the stock market too. But diversification is really key, and understanding that you can take control of your future, and you should know what you're investing in. So if you're investing in a real estate syndication, what does that asset look like? Is it multifamily? We have a short-term rental fund, right? We were talking about that earlier. What does passive investing mean? Passive investing means you're wiring funds, and you are invested in. Last year, I think the fund had 80 plus assets in it. So you're invested in 80 short-term rental assets across the nation, and you don't have to do anything, right? So there's no bug bites. There's no making sure people have toilet paper. They can actually operate the key fob to get in. So that's what that looks like. On my end, it's a lot of juggling, to be honest, but I love it because I'm helping people create wealth. And the goal is to get money in the hands of the right people so that they can use it for good and make an impact.
Yeah. Rory, I think we need to diversify because Angie alluded to the bug bites that I mentioned earlier. And I don't mind working on the properties that we have, but I think that I'm at my limit right now. And that'll change. Rory knows me very well. And I might decide later on this year that I'm completely wrong about it, but we're probably at that point where it might be a good idea to start diversifying into some more passive investment streams. Rory, what do you think about that?
Sure. For the investments that we might consider passive, they are awfully time consuming. We're at the properties a lot. We are repairing properties a lot. We are getting everything set up, doing yard work, and to some degree, that's great. I mean, I advocate for people doing that when they enter the space because it saves you some money and helps you get enhance your cash flow right out of the gate, and also helps you understand what really goes into managing these properties, whatever you're doing. So, being on site, knowing what it takes to clean a short-term rental, know what it takes to do a major construction project on a home. Know what goes into it, so that way when you want to step back, you know how to hire the right people, you know how to build a team because you've had a taste of it yourself. Now, I'm not suggesting that people go out and do high voltage electrical work when they have no experience doing that. That's not at all what I'm suggesting, but it's a great way to understand what really goes into it so you can become a better passive investor. And, I would actually say, ask how those lessons followed you here, because you started when wholesaling, something that is very, very active to the point where once you step off the hamster wheel, everything grinds to a halt. You're doing these passive investments, but you're kind of the general partner, and there's a lot of active work that you just alluded to going into it. But you're also a passive partner in some of these projects. Am I off base to say that the work you did in the most active phases of real estate investing informed the more passive investments that you've been able to do throughout your evolution?
Yes. So, no, you're not off base, I should say. Yes, you're correct. So that active role helped me bankroll, in essence, the passive investments that I have as well. Passive real estate investing is magical. It truly is magical. And so having that experience, though, it really helps understanding what goes into a larger project. I also own a small mobile home park with a partner. So there's two of us. That's an active investment. It's using that expertise and that experience to be able to translate that and help people understand what goes into these investments. because it may be passive for my investors, but I want them to be able to understand looking at the business plan is so critical. It is, you are investing in a business. When you're investing into commercial real estate, it is a business. So what is the business plan? What is the execution? And understanding, what it means to increase rents, how that affects the value. So everything I did, right? And I'm grateful for everything I did. I'm grateful for my time in pharmaceuticals because quite frankly, I was under pharma guidelines, right? Now I'm under SEC guidelines. So I feel very well versed in making sure I'm doing things appropriately, that we have all the right legal docs and the right teams in place to provide the investors the best experience and make sure that they are protected both legally and mitigating their risks as well.
Mm-hmm.
It also sounds like, though, you're involved in a wide range of different types of investments. You mentioned a mobile home park, you're developing land into affordable housing, and all these different categories. And there's been a trend for people to kind of pick one niche and really know that very well and drill down into it. But you seem comfortable to invest in and be involved with a wide range of things. Where does the comfort come from, and are there any challenges with that?
So the comfort comes from having the right team. So if I'm looking at an asset type, and I am a big believer, some people they'll go all in multifamily, right? Or storage or something, and that's all they do. And I think that's great for them. For me, because I'm such a big believer in diversification, I want to work with investors and I want them to be able to have diversified offerings. So for instance, our short-term rental fund provides great cash flow and may provide, in some cases, right? And it's offering by offering, right? So you can't really generalize, but in some cases, it may provide better cash flow than multifamily right now with the interest rates. So that may be more of an equity play, but if an investor is looking for cash flow, they may prefer the short-term rental fund. We own a mobile home park. We're looking for more mobile home parks. I am talking to a business partner about car washes, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think of it, the comfort comes from going back to the thought that you are investing in a business. When you're looking at the valuation of commercial real estate, you're looking at financials, just like you would in a business. So that's where that comfort comes from, and having the right team, the right sponsor team, the right general partners that are surrounding me, because that is my comfort and that is my confidence, because I am very intentional about picking the people I work with. Are there some challenges with that? I guess, yes, but I'm not knee deep in operations day in, day out on all of these asset types. So I would say some challenges of that is frankly just educating my investors on the pros and cons of each asset type, because there are pros and cons of each asset type, and making sure I'm providing that education, because I firmly believe the education piece is a huge component of passive real estate investing, because you always want to know what you're investing in, whether that's an asset type or a market. So I do a lot of education on the markets we're investing in, as well as the asset types and what we like and maybe what we don't like.
Mm-hmm. So let's say that I'm listening to this and I have $100,000 to invest, right? Just a round number. 100 is the accredited threshold, right? Like accredited versus non-accredited, or no, it's $1 million. That's right. So let's say $100,000, right? $100,000 cash in my pocket saying, hey, I want to do something with it. Maybe I have a couple other investments going on. I want to give it to somebody to get a passive investment. What could I expect in coming to one of your events, having a conversation with you, talking to some of the other people that have done investing with you? Is there a recommendation to kind of say, well, here's a portfolio of options that we have. This one might have a 8 to 12% payback. This might have a 6 to 10% payback. This is a 5-year payback period. Like, kind of what happens to that person that shows up like for the first time with some cash ready to go?
So that person typically goes through our website and signs up as an interested investor. And they always have to do that. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, they have to show interest, right? They have to actually take a step. I'm not going to do that for them for so many reasons, also for legal reasons. They have to go through that. They also, so part of that, it's a very short intake form, asks about financials, and that will funnel them so that I know whether they are an accredited investor or a non-accredited investor. so that I know what type of offerings they can get. And then the next step, whether or not, and if they're at one of my events, right, this will help meet the criteria as well. But we need to have a call if they're going to have any exposure to our 506B offerings, because you have to have a relationship with me to get those offerings. So we need to schedule a call, and or if you're at my event, right? So all of that is documented. So once that is documented, right, and it sounds like a lot, but I promise it's really not. It's very simple. And so once you're in our system, you will start getting offerings, and you get offerings via email. And so each offering will have again, we go over what we like about the deal, why the asset type, why the market. There's investor slides. There's often a webinar. And then it has the returns. So then it will have the returns listed per offering. So you as the investor are choosing which offerings you're saying, yes, I want to raise my hand. I'm interested in this. And there's often a soft commit form or something to signify, yes, I'm interested in this. And then the team circles back. And then we go through all the subscription documents, the private placement memorandum, operating agreement, and wire, and all that from there.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the offerings to review. And part of the phone call or the conversation that I start with, and most of the investors, is understanding what the reason is for passively investing, where the funds are coming from, how much they have to invest, and how long they're interested in investing for. So some of our offerings, we're actually looking at rolling something out that's going to be very liquid. A lot of our offerings have a 5-year hold. One of them had a 2-year hold last year. Mm-hmm. One of them had a 1-year hold, right? So it's different hold times, different returns. And then that matters as far as where your funds are coming from. Mm-hmm. So if someone has saved up $50,000 and that's every dollar they have saved up, them investing in a 5-year hold and not knowing what's coming down the road in 5 years, and it's the only cash they have, it's probably not advisable. But those are conversations we have. But at the end of the day, the investors are making their own decisions as to what they're moving forward with in their investments.
Mm-hmm. Does the payback for some of your investments or many of your investments begin on month 1 after they've invested? Or with all the 5-year hold periods, is it all going to be paid back with interest and everything at the very end, compounded over those 5 years?
So the short answer is neither. And there's not a blanket response. Typically, if an asset has to be stabilized, which is where we provide the value add and we're able to force appreciation, typically those assets, you are not getting distributions often for 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. But it depends on the investment, right? So we talked about short-term rentals, and that fund is spinning off cash flow much faster. So the expected distributions were 6 months. We were able to roll them out in 3 months to our investors. I had a recent offering that closed in Arizona. Investors got distributions the following month. So it just depends. But we typically will do quarterly distributions, or if it looks like they're not getting distributions for 12 to 18 months, we let that be known best we can. Now, if a preferred return is deferred for some reason or is not paid, it is deferred. So it's not like the investor, just didn't get paid for 12 months or something, right? All of that is deferred, and then we start catching it up. Mm-hmm. But there are very few investments, although there are some offerings where the investor sees nothing until the end. And if they do, often those provide a higher return or average annual rate of return to basically, right, encourage investors to do that. Yeah. So there's no cash flow till then. But that does happen sometimes.
Yeah, and a strategy with that, I mean, let's say somebody is working a W-2 job or has other investments. Maybe they want to start like a waterfall where, like, this year you invest in, fund A that pays back 5 years from now, but next year you also invest in fund B that pays back 5 years from then. So if you could wait, 3 to 5 years, whatever the payback period is, then they'll start kind of paying dividends to you and paying you back, year after year after year. You just have a couple of years to wait until that happens. And I'm sure that happens to some of your investors.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing, honestly. And then the goal is to get, if you're investing 100,000 here, and let's call it you're getting 200,000 back. Then if you're reinvesting that 200,000, that just snowballs. And so 5 years may seem like a long time, but it's really not. And if you're close to doubling your money, which is our goal, is coming close to that, right? And it is an investment, so there's risks. Let me put that disclaimer out there. But if you're looking at reinvesting your proceeds you're getting, you can snowball very, very quickly through syndications and not have to do any of the work, which is the beauty.
You just get the emails, the updates, and the community element to it as well, right? Because you're building community around your investors. Are they getting together at those quarterly events, or are you having Zoom chats with them? Is there a Facebook group? Like, what is the community element to what you put together with Ohana Investment Partners?
So a lot of what we do are in-person events here within Orlando, although I have investors all over the nation. So I will do a virtual event coming up where we'll have everyone come in, and that way they can connect, share information if they want to chat amongst themselves or whatnot. But yes, the goal is to create community and have them, answer questions, talk to each other. What's your experience? We provide as many resources as I possibly can. Also, knowing that someone's walking alongside the same journey you are provides a different level of comfort. And even if it's, hey, do you understand your K1, right? Or something like that. Or do you have an accountant you use? And we recently, K1s, we've spent a lot of time with K1s because as an investor, you're getting, depending on the situation, a 1099 or typically a K1. So you're getting that. And so you're getting a lot of the tax benefits of real estate investing without doing the work. But I had my accountant walk through how to understand a K1 and what you're looking at. It's important. So
can I play devil's advocate for a couple things and we can solve the things in my head? All right. So we did a little syndication a couple years ago and, we got our money back. We made some money on it. Right. But the kind of the experience I was left with there were a couple good things. Like I felt like I was updated regularly, from the people. I felt like they were legitimate operators, that were putting it to those. This is very small potatoes. There's like a $20,000 investment or something. And, I got back 30 after a couple of years. During it, I think there was an additional optional capital call, or there's an optional way to put more money into it. I don't know if capital call is the right term for it. And I didn't put additional money into it because I wanted to use the money for a different investment. And then there was an additional year that it took to pay back afterward, like beyond what we kind of expected. So those kind of situations, like, do those come up frequently? Is that just an isolated one-off that kind of happened to us? That it didn't leave a bad taste. It just left one of those unsatisfying tastes in my mind.
Fair question. So capital calls. Capital calls happen on occasion. They have happened more recently than they have in the past because a lot of operators went in with a bridge loan. So they may have had a certain rate for 2 or 3 years, and then they have to refi, right, or get a new loan. Well, oh, by the way, if interest rates are going from 2 to 7% or whatever, right? That's a significant difference. So if you can't, right, if you're struggling, we've seen other operators do capital calls. None of the syndications that I have been a part of have done a capital call. That is one of the things I talk about. One of the things when I'm vetting operators, I say, hey, how many full cycles have you been through? How many capital calls? How much do you have in reserves? So that we want to protect our investors from a capital call. We don't that's not what you want. You really don't want a capital call. And if there's a capital call, you want to make sure that it's going to the GPs first before you roll that out to the LPs. So does it happen? Yes. Is it unfortunate? Yes. Have I been through that personally and experienced it in any of the syndications I've been part of? No. That's not to say, right? It's an investment. There's a risk in everything. As far as the wind down period or the sell off or sunset, however you want to look at that, all of that is typically in your subscription docs, your private placement memorandum, your operating agreement, all of that is in there. So I tell people, and they get the docs and they're like, oh, what should I look what should I look at? And Rory probably can back me up. I'm like, it's a legal doc. I can do nothing but tell you should read the whole thing. And so looking at the wind down period and understanding, because too, if we're looking, for instance, our short-term rental fund, if we're winding out or we're selling off 90 assets, that's not going to happen overnight, even if we package them as portfolios. So we have a wind down period or a sunset period in there if needed. But obviously at any capital event, the investors are still getting paid back. So based on the waterfalls, they may be still getting some of the proceeds. But there typically is a wind down period. The operator team knew if they had to sell it or they're refinancing, that's coming before year 5 or however long it was. So you're preparing for that, whether it's another loan, whether it's refinancing or selling the asset. But you want to make sure going into these things that you're saying, hey, what is your sales criteria? You never want to be a motivated seller. So you want to understand, what is their entry cap? What is their exit cap? What is their plan, right? What does their debt service look like? We spend so much time on that now. What does the debt service look like on the assets? Because you don't want to have to be forced to refinance or sell in 2 years, because who the heck knows what the interest rates are going to be like in 2 years. But yeah, there's typically, there may be a wind down period. Some of these assets, if it's a $50 million asset, you may not have investors on every corner, and that's why it's important to know too what asset type you're investing in and what markets. So the only offerings I roll out are in the Southeast and the Sunbelt states. I know you guys are in the Northeast, no offense. I'm not, nothing up there for me, right? It's a different, when we look at the migration patterns and the employer patterns, everyone's pouring into the South. So that's where the confidence is of, hey, we're going to have to offload this asset at some point. Where are our buyers going to be? So it's just stuff like that. I hope that answered that.
It sure did. Rory, do you have a follow-up for that? We touched upon a couple legal things in there.
No, I actually want to wrap up on something that's completely not legal related at all. And that's kind of circling back to why we're doing this in the first place. What does your work-life balance look like today after you've gone through these changes and really retooled what your business looks like?
So it looks pretty. Some weeks are different than others, right? It depends if it's K1 season. It depends if I have an offering rolling out and how many events I'm running. I'm finding that I'm running quite a few events, but I love them, so it doesn't feel like work. My typical day, I went cycling this morning. I started work at about 10:30, and I'll be done. I'll wrap 4. I need to run to the grocery store in the interim. But then I have some days where I may have an event until 9 o'clock at night. But then there's flex time, right? And so I may work till midnight one night, but that's because it's quiet and I can get a ton done. And that's because I choose to do that. But then I'm taking flex time, right? So my goal and what I wanted to build, and so the proof will be in the pudding this summer, is to be able to spend time off with my son when he has time out of school. So last summer, we traveled quite a bit. I was in the middle of a raise and we were in Colorado, and I would work for 1 or 2 hours a day. And we would hang out and we explored the, Rocky Mountains and wherever we were. We were in Utah as well. It was wonderful. So this summer, we're going to go back and forth to the beach. So we're going to be in Orlando. We're going to be on the beach. So we're going to see what that looks like. Am I going to work a couple hours a day? Probably, but I love to do it. And then the rest of the day is his. So that work-life balance is much better. I'm also a person, I try to take off a week. The week of my birthday, I was like, I'm going to take off a week. I'm going to do this. I get bored. So, the reality is I love to work. I love what I do. So I want to work. But I built that, and that's a really great place to be. I'm also in my 40s. So it's really tough. I don't have any friends where I'm like, hey, you want to go to lunch on a Tuesday? Right? They're like, what the heck? No, I'm working. And then otherwise it's, my entrepreneur friends, we typically will go and talk about business, but no one wants to just hang out by the pool all day.
Yeah. It's not in your DNA to do that either. What you've just described right there, I think a lot of the people who are listening to this, myself included, that is that is what we're all looking to achieve. We're looking to call our own shots and dictate our own schedule. And sometimes work, merits a focus for a couple hours. And sometimes you could put that aside in the middle of the day and deal with something with your son or something personally. And, working a W-2 job in an office building, in an office park doesn't usually allow people to do that. And that's why people are listening to podcasts like this and, working with folks like yourself, Angie, who can lead them into the pathway where you can dictate your own schedule. And it's something we should all want to achieve. I mean, like, I'm in my 40s also. And I feel like what you've described is kind of how I spend most of my time these days, where I'm not commuting to something every single day. Yesterday, I was on the road for 200 something miles, right? I drove to New Hampshire, spent the day up there. I was overseeing some stuff that was going on. We're having a drain put in and, met with a couple folks that are up there, drove way down to Newton, Massachusetts and volunteered my time with the Flag Football League that I'm involved with. I referee on the weekends. And then afterward, I drove home and, saw our daughter. So, and that was a perfect day for me, right? I didn't not want to do any of that stuff. And I couldn't have done that if I was still working a W-2 job, but I laid the seeds along the way that allowed me not to have to rely on that job, just like you've done. And, setting that day up is intentional. I'm sure that what you're looking at right now was probably the vision that you had many years ago when you were still working in pharmaceutical sales. So that's amazing that you're able to kind of achieve that. And who knows what it's going to be a couple of years from now, right?
Who knows, right?
Who knows? Yeah. I mean, maybe you'll get bored of this company and burn it down and do something else and you'll become like a tech entrepreneur. I don't know, but
no, definitely not. Definitely not. I'm sales and marketing, and I have now built the business of my dreams. So my next exit will be sitting
done. Yes, actually sitting on the beach.
And that's it. And then maybe raising for one offering. That would be easy. And then we still have money coming in, right? So
I could tell that your sales and marketing background from working for 2 decades has really helped in what you're doing right now. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. There's a lot of translatable skills. I mean, I was in media sales for a long time. I was in the media business for a long time, but half that time was as a media sales manager. And I kind of see a lot of what the good salespeople did and the skills that they actually, allowed them to succeed in that business. And I see a lot of that in what you're describing. Pharmaceutical sales is different. You're selling to doctors, you're selling to hospitals, but you're selling to basically local businesses. At least in the case of what we were selling, it was local media sales. And I think that there are very translatable skills from worlds like that into, a real estate investing capacity. And you've discovered how to do that as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's wrap up with our final 3 questions we ask all our guests who come on the podcast, and then we could spend a little bit of time where you could tell people where they can get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you, your investments, get involved with some of your events in Orlando, or just kind of have a chat. We ask these of all the guests that come on just to wrap it up and learn a little bit more about you. First question, if you can get on stage for half an hour and talk about any subject in the world with zero preparation, what would that be?
Owning your own dream.
Yeah.
Hands down. I think it's critical. This is not a dress rehearsal. We have one shot at this life. So it better be your best damn life that you can make. And it's not worth living someone else's dream. I can talk about that. I'm actually hosting an event in August. It's a women's event. And that is one of the things I'm going to discuss because it is important.
Where's that event going to be?
Orlando.
All right. If it's on your website, we'll link it up in the show notes. If not, you'll have to send us a link so we could actually put that on there.
I will.
Because this podcast will be out in July, as I mentioned. So maybe people will hear it and want to come to the event. Quick follow-up to that. At what point in your life did you kind of have that switch turned on? Like, you're in your 40s right now. Like, did that happen from day one when you started working? Or was it like as you started working a number of years, maybe in your 30s, at some point you're like, I want to change this all and I want to really take the control?
So it was the years I turned 40. Maybe it was a midlife crisis. I have no idea. But I just woke up and went, it was just the realization that I was doing something I didn't love. And I didn't know entrepreneurship was an option. I didn't grow up with a family of entrepreneurs. And until I started getting into real estate investing, I didn't realize that that was something I could do. And I did all the things I was supposed to do, but there was still this itch I couldn't scratch. Mm-hmm. And that was running my own business. And so that was my aha moment was in my 40s.
Yeah.
On my couch in my room doing my mindset stuff. And I went, I'm going to quit my job.
Isn't that a liberating feeling also? Once you do that, you're like, I'm going to do this and now I got to figure out how to go forward.
How to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Rory's about to enter the decade of enlightenment, which is the 40s. I've never said that before, but I'm in my 40s, and I think the 40s are very enlightening. And Rory has a couple more months until he hits the 40s, but yes,
we still have a few more months. I'm not there yet.
I know, but it's coming.
It's amazing. I feel like the older I get, the better I get, and age is just a number. I tell myself all the time, I'm like, I feel like I'm in my 20s. I feel great.
Well, here's what it is. Like, when you're in your 40s, you're more established and like you kind of have an FU mindset. Like, you know what? If I don't want to do this, screw it. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, if you have the confidence in yourself that you don't have to do whatever that is, that's when you do that. You're not impressionable in your 20s or looking to make everyone else happy. You want to make yourself happy. And I think that level of clarity happened to me in my 40s. It really did. And it's just so liberating once it happens. Okay. That's a whole separate podcast. Second question. Tell us something happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
So early in my life, in my 20s, and I forget how old he was, to be honest. But I had a very dear friend of mine, and he got killed in Afghanistan in war. It rocked my world. Quite honestly, the silver lining was that I realized that you never know if tomorrow is coming. So all of a sudden, money doesn't matter, right? It's just who you're spending time with, the impact you're making in the world. That's what matters. So it changed my entire mindset. I'm a silver lining person. I still miss him, but I'm a silver lining person. So I will forever be grateful to Luke for teaching me that life lesson and knowing, hey, this is not a dress rehearsal. You have one shot, make a damn difference, make an impact, and, be something, because, you never know if you're going to be here. So that was my impact moment. And, his family is still very dear to me. I just went out. I actually took my son out to meet them this past year.
That's awesome. Yeah, that happens in our lives. A moment happens early on that you just take with you and it motivates you. It just keeps you going forward. So,
absolutely.
Final question. Tell us something that you're listening to or watching or reading these days.
I am actually listening to Happy Money. So it talks about the flow of money and happy money and how to attract it and be happy with money you're sending out and thankful and grateful for money that's coming in.
I like Happy Money.
Yeah,
Rory, Rory, can you get that audiobook for us so it's available?
I have a few credits. I'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
I listen to audiobooks all the time. I read. I'm also reading Intentional Living by John Maxwell. I'm a John Maxwell trained speaker and coach. I love John Maxwell. I think talk about a guy that's made a huge impact. So I'm reading that right now. And then there's always something. I'm always trying to learn and grow.
Bro, you've done. I think you're flourishing is from what you've described. So, Angie, this has been a delightful conversation to really get to know you a little bit better and to learn a little bit about how you're operating your life and your business. I said life first intentionally there. If people want to get a hold of you, learn more about you, have a conversation, invest with you, what are some of the best ways?
So the best way would be to go to my website, ohanainvestmentpartners.com. And there is a link to become an interested investor. And that just says, hey, I'm interested in potentially passively investing in real estate. There's no obligation. There's no fee. I'm a no pressure kind of person. So feel free to click that. You can also email me, Angie at ohanainvestmentpartners.com. And I know you guys are going to include links. But you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook under Angie Lee Akee. But yes, I would love to hear from you and connect.
I feel like I'm getting some of your newsletters on LinkedIn sent to me.
Oh, you are.
Yeah. Again, it's been your name's been in my inbox a number of times leading up to this episode. So
fantastic.
See, it works.
It works.
Rory, where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you?
They can find me through my real estate brokerage, Next Home Titletown. That's at nexthometitletown.com, or through my law practice. That's Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. And as the least important person on this podcast, if you want to get a hold of me and want to be on the podcast or have questions for me, Rory, Angie, anything that we've talked about, you can reach me, Jason, at nexthometitletown.com. That's it. That's a wrap. Angie, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and to learn about passive investing, mindset, leaving the corporate life, everything you've talked about. It's so near and dear to my heart. So, lots of people who are listening to this, if you've made it this far in the episode, it is near and dear to your heart too. So we really appreciate your time today. We'll look forward to catching up with you again in the future. And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star review or drop a comment in the comment section. We're happy to respond to those. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Council, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.